Hey, so this is the Drunkalogs, a podcast about addiction and recovery in which each guest shares their version of how it was, what happened, and how it is now, and then endures a half-hour Q&A at the hands of your host, Nick Morton.
My next guest grew up in Las Vegas, Nevada, where he had a eureka moment at a very young age, which made him realize that all he wanted to do with his life was play guitar, write music, and perform for live audiences. And for a while, that's exactly what he did. But booze and meth and oxy led him off this path. And it was only when his ex-wife kidnapped his baby daughter that he realized everything had to change. He has now written a new memoir, Hide and Seek, a dad's journey from soulless addiction to soul custody that chronicles his efforts to clean up and regain custody of his child. We talk here about his journey back to music and the challenge of putting your so-called faith into action. Won't you please welcome Paul Summers.
I am originally from Las Vegas.
Oh, wow. And
One
did
of
you
those
grow up
born
there?
here.
Like, spend your
Yes.
formative
Yes, I
years
did.
there?
Yeah.
Wow. And like, what was your life like?
Yeah, Vegas. So right off the bat, a Sin City, city of indulgence, overindulgence, the kind of wild culture, but being born and raised there, growing up there, kids were not to be seen nor heard. So it wasn't what it is today.
And what did your folks do for work? Were they together?
Yeah, they were together till the end.
Right.
50 years of marriage. So that didn't set a impossible
Right.
expectation, but but mom was a banker, and her first job started right after I was born, and my dad was a jack of all trades, master of none. So he just kept doing what he had to do to provide.
And did you have siblings?
Yes, two older brothers.
Right. And did they party?
Yes.
Nice.
They
So
partied.
what was your initial introduction to like drugs and alcohol?
The initial introduction, and I'll throw in, Dad was a rageaholic, so he was one of those guys that drank every night. Seen him drunk handful of times.
Right.
So he was.
What was his go-to nightly protocol? Like a couple beers or?
Nightly would be the Pabst Blue Ribbon, and
Right.
and then as he got older, it was vodka.
Right.
So he made sure that when I was doing Jack and Cokes, that was a sissy drink. He had to throw that in. Anyway, I was with my oldest brother. He got me drunk first time, and
how old were you at that point?
14, I think.
Right.
True to most stories, I overdid it till I was vomiting in his sidewalk of his apartments. And
how old was he at that point?
20.
So he was still living in Vegas then.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And did you enjoy it? Was it fun?
I enjoyed feeling drunk until it was, too many.
Right.
But
and were you like a good student in high school?
Yeah. So I mean, I was a good student. And the other thing about my parents is I think they worshiped the god of pleasure. I mean, we didn't have religion, so getting clean for me wasn't this coming to terms with God thing. I didn't have God. We didn't grow up with God. We grew up with, like, if it feels good, do it.
Right. Wow.
Which as a natural rebellion for a kid, I kind of was a very straight-laced kid.
Right.
They had the liquor cabinet open to drink, and excuse me. So anytime I wanted to, I could, and that kind of took the appeal out of it for me.
And did your siblings, did they sort of partake? Were they just sort of like, yeah, have a cocktail? It's available to us.
Yeah, they did a lot, and maybe seeing them do it all the time, probably wanted to be different.
Right.
So
interesting.
So
did you go to college?
I went to college for a little bit and then dropped out because I was in a punk band.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a good punk scene in Vegas in the early '80s.
Right, I bet.
There's now a little sort of plug, I guess. Excuse me. There's a punk rock museum now that just opened up, and they have a section dedicated to the local scene. I mean, it's a worldwide attraction now.
And
And
it's in Vegas?
in Vegas, yeah.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah, definitely worth checking out, especially if you liked punk music at any time. It takes you through the decades, even has modern punk bands.
And is Paul Summers in the did you make the museum?
My guitar is in the
No
museum.
way. How cool.
Yeah,
And and when did you start playing music?
when I was, well, I learned when I was 14. I started playing in clubs when I was 19.
Mm-hmm.
And that was sort of the transition out of wanting to be, get a good job. I don't know if I ever want, actually, I I went to college just because that's what, we were supposed to do.
Does, yeah.
Especially I was, I had a good grade point average, and I was good at school. So that was the natural transition. But my first concert was Queen.
Uh-huh.
And that changed everything for me.
That's the first concert you attended.
First concert I went to.
Where was it?
I was in Las Vegas at the Aladdin Theater for the Performing Arts, which was 7,500 seat venue.
Wow, that's an amazing place to see Queen.
Yeah. Oh gosh. And they were just breaking big with We Are the Champions had just come out. And I was seduced, seeing Freddie Mercury and his tights and how he pranced around the stage, and Brian May, the guitarist. I was like, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do.
How cool.
So
yeah, sorry, go.
Oh, I was going to say that, that seeped into, I got into a band, and, the band started playing more. We were playing clubs, and what
was the name of the band, that band?
The first band was called Smart Bomb.
Uh-huh.
Named after a video game.
And were you guys kind of straight edge, or were you partying?
We were partying. Yeah.
Right. Nice.
Maybe not so much, but I don't. So my idea of partying was, it's very true to the alcoholic nature for some of us. I didn't drink that often, but when I did, I couldn't stop. So I'm playing bars at 19. Here's some drinks. So I was drinking. The rest of the band was more into drugs at the time. Right. Which I actually wasn't. I was a late bloomer when it came to drugs. Right. I didn't even start into drugs till my mid-20s.
Right.
So
does the band, do you guys have some success? Do you start touring? How's your life evolved from there?
No, not that band. It wasn't until I got into, so they were kind of a punkish rock band. And then I got into the real punk bands in the mid-'80s. And we started opening for all the big acts, Black Flag, Circle Jerks.
What was that band called?
That band was called AWOL.
Nice.
And I've got our music up as AWOL Vegas in case anyone wants to look into. That's what it's called. That's where you can find it on the.
And it's AWOL, like absent without leave.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then I just added Vegas because there's probably a punk band named AWOL in most every other town.
Right. So. Yeah. Sure.
So we got good shows. And then the next band I had was called Triple Ripple, which was like a psychedelic punk, sort of like the Cramps. And
nice.
And we had built a big following in Vegas, so didn't really feel the need to go outside of Vegas so much and tour. Because anytime we played, there was 200 to 400 people would show up. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, it was great. But that's about when started experimenting with drugs, came in.
What'd you get into?
Got started with psychedelics, and then that led, pot was always around.
Right.
Never was like a drug of choice. Mm-hmm. I didn't like the numbing effect, I guess, in that direction. Like I like it in other directions, got into some opiates, but not much. But then a girlfriend turned me on to meth, and that was a game changer. It was, the fast popping synapses, that really, really was like, to me, it was like, here's how I'll stay young kind of thing.
Right.
Right. The lies.
And how old were you when you first tried meth?
26, I
Right.
believe.
And the
So
band, you were still playing with, what band were you with at that point?
at that
Ripple,
point, it was
Triple
Triple
Ripple.
Ripple.
Right.
Yeah. And then like I knew I wanted more out of music. I had definitely like found my stride as far as being an accomplished guitarist. And so I started querying, sending press kits out, trying to get a record deal.
Right.
And the guys in the band weren't quite as serious as me, so put together a new band, and that one's called Cries and Whispers. And I I actually put all these back catalogs up on social media or music platforms. So if anyone ever wants to listen to any of it, but Cries and Whispers, we started touring,
Right.
and we definitely like we put out a CD, and we're selling it out of our van, and covered a lot of area, but it was just that was a party. That was like endless drug use, um, lack of sleep. So we ended up getting in a fist fight on stage, and so I moved to San Francisco for a little while.
So the fist fight on stage, was that the end of the band?
For about a year.
Right.
It was the end of the band. Yeah, we
Did you ever
ended
see
up.
that documentary Dig?
Yes, yes.
That's pretty amazing. Andy Timoner, who made it's a friend of mine, and like
Oh, no way.
the that just that moment when like she's riding in the back of the car and they just like the band breaks up like as they're driving down the street. It's just so amazing.
Yeah,
Anyway, like Jonestown Massacre, like it seems like they got in quite a few fights on stage.
yeah, yeah. I have a friend that like he absolutely adores Brian Jonestown Massacre, and they're still playing, believe it or
Yeah,
not,
yeah.
as many times as they've broken up.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I like the band. I like their
Yeah,
music.
no, me too. Me too.
It's just it's interesting. So you moved to San Francisco, and what happens up there?
Moved to San Francisco, and so now I'm not the big fish in a small pond. I have trouble finding a band. I'm delivering phone books for a living, and I'm doing meth every day.
Right.
Ends up being too much on the relationship I was in at that time. So I moved back to Vegas for a while, and that was definitely the descent into daily drug use. Excuse me. And I had and a lot of drinking.
Mhm.
Sorry, I'm remembering little bits and pieces as we're talking.
Sure.
Uh, and the drinking got heavier, so it was like the mix of hard booze and meth culminated in one Christmas morning. My band was playing. Gosh, I cheated on my girlfriend the night before that I lived with, uh, in a drunken stupor. And I, so it's Christmas Eve. We have this like get together at this gig where we're all exchanging presents, and I'm telling my girlfriend that I live with, hey, hon, I'll see you in a couple hours. And somebody shows up with coke at the gig, and so I'm doing that till morning. It's about 7 in the morning. I'm the only, it's Vegas, so it's 24-hour. And I'm at the same bar, and I'm the only one there. I'm the only one that's been there for 2 hours now. And the bartender's like, he's doing his side work. He's like, bro, man, don't you got somewhere to be? And I kind of like come up off the bar. Oh gosh, that's right. I got to go. I don't know how I drove, but I drove, to my apartment, and I go over to my family's house. So it's like my brother, his wife, his 3 kids, my mom and dad, some of their friends, and I arrive with my girlfriend, and I mean I haven't been to sleep yet, and
Yeah.
I'm throwing up. I start throwing up all over the place because I drank too much,
Right.
um, and I was supposed to join my girlfriend at the time with her at her family's house after my family's house. Wasn't going to make it. It was a huge event for them because her mom and dad had never, like in 10 years, they hadn't done Christmas together because they had a brutal divorce, and they were going to make this accommodation because me and this girlfriend were so serious, and
Oh wow.
then I don't even show up to make it. And that was the first aha moment,
Mhm.
the trap door that I didn't realize had or the bottom that I didn't realize had a trap door in it, I suppose is
Right.
a saying I've heard. So yeah, so I didn't drink for 12 years at that point after
Wow.
after that event.
Just cold turkey.
Cold turkey. I have,
Amazing.
he's passed now, but my uncle John, I have an uncle John. He was in the program from 1971. So, at that point he had 20 something years sober, and he was an influence,
Mhm.
He definitely had one of those real kind old timers attitudes, where, it was just like everything's okay, man. Everything's all right,
Right, right.
You'll get there.
Did you go to any meetings or no?
At that time, no, no.
No. But
I
did you talk to him just in general, or you
I
just
talked to
like
him in general.
right. And you sort of
Yeah,
liked his vibe, like he was presenting a life that interested you, a way of
yeah,
being in the world. Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah,
And
that's cool.
and anytime he talked about the program, it kind of went over my head,
Yeah.
you know. Uh, but he just had such a kind, loving nature behind him.
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
Um, the odd thing is, it comes to be like his story ends up so similar to mine
Right.
in that he had one daughter, I had one daughter, and he lost custody of her because of his substance abuse,
Mhm.
his drinking, and that was the same thing that happened to me at first. So uh,
So 12 years go by, you get married, you have a child.
it kind of 12 years go by. Yeah, I so in that 12 years, yeah, sorry, it's kind of jumping around a little bit. I'll
That's okay.
try to make this followable. I In that 12 years, so I have this girlfriend up in San Francisco. I'm sober, but I'm doing meth every day.
Right.
It becomes too much for the relationship, understandably. Um, and so I moved back to Vegas. Now, when I moved back to Vegas, I start college up again. I have all these grand plans. I'm working. I'm in three bands. I'm in uh, a punk band and a rock band, and I'm doing this like singer songwriter kind of thing. I'm hosting this open mic for acoustic called the Acoustic Asylum in Vegas for years, and yet just gradually that slide, is happening. When I first moved back, I was like, I swore off drugs. I'm back in town. I'm serious now. I've lost some things that are important to me that matter, and you know, it was like I was at uh, a party one night,
Mhm.
and this was probably like 5, 6 months into like actually hadn't done anything.
Yeah.
The drinking seemed like I had a good grip on it this time. I'm not drinking anymore, um, and not doing drugs. And some guy shows up with, hey bro, try this, man. And oh, I'm safe, I'm good. And it was coke, and like I was up all night writing a college paper on it, and thinking, oh man, this is the answer. This is the
Right.
answer. And yeah, sure enough, within a month, I'm back to doing like psychedelics all the time and doing meth all the time and doing weird mixes. Like maybe this meth is a problem. How about if I mix it with mushrooms? Like it won't be so. Or if I just do opiates, or I'm doing all
What
these
is
combinations.
what is mushrooms and meth like?
Horrible, horrible. It honestly, it's like they do battle in your head.
I bet.
You
Yeah,
know? And neither one win.
yeah. Sure. Just
I don't
tears you
know.
apart.
It does tear you apart. Yeah, I'd say 10 hours later, I'll never. So don't do that. Don't do those.
Sounds
They do not
horrible.
work together. And it's so funny seeing, so much, well, I don't know if it's funny, but the harm reduction, philosophy these days, and the microdosing,
Right.
and uh, like sometimes I think of that with like when I mix those, like what if someone's trying to get off meth and they're being given this message of, well, just microdose all the time.
Right.
And then at some point, maybe they relapse on the meth and like, oh, it's going to be a car wreck, but
Right.
yeah. So the drug use got so much that I just like, every time I tried to quit, somebody would find me in town and be like, hey, bro, here's this stuff,
Right.
and I never had the ability to say no, and
Sure.
so I came up with this great idea that I don't think anyone's tried. I moved 1,000 miles away.
Right. Clever you.
No, so I moved up to Portland, and part of why I moved was like Everclear just hit, and I was like, I'm going to be in like a a cool
Right.
band up there. I had some friends up here. They're like, dude, come on up, man. And so I moved with the certainty, like I'm going to go up there, and I'm going to be the person I was always meant to be. Within 3 weeks, I knew where the meth dealer was in my neighborhood, sought him out, and I was back running a gun. And um, so yeah, it didn't take long. And so this is about where I uh, I still don't give up on my dream. My dream is to play music for a living and write songs that people love,
Right.
and to tour. And uh, so I finally like really put a bunch of things together. I'm occasionally partying, but for the most part, it's just like I'm still sober. So this is that
No,
11
you're not
years.
drinking,
I'm not, yeah, I'm not drinking. So this is
but
still
you're
that, like,
occasionally using drugs.
correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And um that occasionally starts becoming more and more with the opiates now.
Right.
Meth was the type of drug where um, I could do a bunch, um, and I could binge on it for 3 to 7 days or something like that, and then the guilt and shame just completely overcome. I'm never doing that again. I missed work. I missed these appointments, and watched 4 days worth of porn, and my eyes are bleeding from uh, doing the things that I do when I'm on meth, and dressing up as a woman, playing with toys, just like
Right.
it's all on. Like I come become this completely separate personality and everything. Very isolated, and not funny. I don't smile. And anyway, this happens, and so meth was always the kind of drug where it was like I'd have that binge, and then 4 months later, or for 4 months I wouldn't touch it. But the opiate addiction started becoming gradually daily. And I I put out uh, a CD of my own music, and I start touring behind that. I'm getting airplay on radio stations. I'm getting press, in all these towns. Things are really coming together. And but it's just like gradually, behind the scenes, I'm like craving that release more and more. I end up I've always kept employment,
Hmm.
but I never kept career jobs,
Right.
because my really because I wanted to make it in music, and I never wanted anything to interfere with that.
Sure.
And so I have this part-time job at a photo studio. I end up meeting my daughter's mom,
Hmm.
um, and she's 19 and I'm 38.
Right.
So huge age difference. And she's like a raver, so ecstasy, lots of ecstasy, alcohol, and her drug of choice was pot, which, so, we start partying all the time. We end up having a kid, and uh, that was, and so this memoir that's coming out next month,
Hmm.
hide and seek. The name of it's hide and seek. I'm doing a
Hmm.
plug. Is that cool?
Of course.
So hide and seek, a dad's journey from soulless addiction to soul custody. So this is where the memoir starts.
Right.
Is like the mess. It's basically the mess.
Right.
I have every inclination in me, and I do believe my parents instilled this in me, to do the right thing, to, be a good human, definitely to try hard, don't give up, um, and drugs had, I'd allowed drugs and alcohol to chip away my disease, just took everything I had that was good to offer and sabotaged it all. And so here I was, I become a dad. The very first thing I do the day my daughter's born is like, call the dealer, dude, I got to get high and celebrate.
Right, of course.
And that turned into, and that celebration was opiates. Now I have a kid. The meth is too much of a severing. It's a feeling severing drug for me. And so, really hard to like, be a, holding your baby when you're like this,
Yeah.
So I tried to steer clear, but I'm an addict, man. I kept finding ways to come back to it.
Right.
And what really increased during that time, so the first 3 years of my daughter's life, was my opiate use. I mean, we had a friend who was he got a prescription for oxys, and that by far, for me, the worst drug they've ever created. I was just watching this show last night. It was on the news how, the Sackler family is, in all this, they want to file bankruptcy, and, the
Protect themselves. And yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the people who have lost loved ones are like, no, you have to be accountable to this,
Yeah.
And it's like, well, we can't go back in time and fix what's going on. And, my suggestion is take the drug away, man. Like, just stop putting it out. Why is it still on the market?
Right. Yeah.
It's still doing damage. But I know there's worse ones to worry about nowadays, but
Right.
Definitely opened the door to so many people's addiction, including
Right.
my own.
Yeah, sure.
And so as that, as that became, because to me it's like OxyContin is like the cocaine of opiates. It's like you keep wanting more of it, which I had never experienced before with the other opiates.
Interesting.
Like right away you want more.
Yeah.
Used to, I don't know. I was never a heroin user though, so I can't speak to that. But
Right.
But that, that was the thing. It's like we kept wanting more, and we were going broke. Like we got credit card up in the 50,000 range. When we're paying our mortgage with a credit card. We're fortunate enough to get into a house, and I came up with this. My second, no, it's not second. I don't know. I came up with another just great idea. It was like, why don't I go back to alcohol? This. No, I'm being sarcastic. It's like I thought I could get off the opiates by doing booze again.
Right.
And so 12 years of of alcohol sobriety out the window in one night. Next morning, my daughter's mom, I don't call her my wife anymore because she's an ex-wife, but
Right.
my daughter's mom, she's like, F you, I don't know. Can we cuss on your show? Is that?
Oh yeah. Fuck yeah.
I'm trying to remember if I've heard it on your other podcast, but
For
what some of your other guests, but okay. She's just like, fuck you, you fucking asshole. And I'm like, what? And I'm like waking up out of, obviously I'd passed out drunk, and I was like, spitting on her and calling her name. It's like, whoa, I was never a blackout drunk, and like now I am. Like, what? So the mess ends finally with not knowing how the heck we're going to get through the next day. We're out of money. We don't have enough like we end up losing the house that we had. But because part of our disease is being resourceful, I actually sold the house before we lost it.
Right.
So it was more party money to keep this going. Now we go from homeowners to being back in an apartment. We're both unemployable. I have a part-time job doing deliveries. And when I applied for the job, they made me take a P test, and they're like, is there anything we should know about this P test? And I said, well, I get prescribed opiates because I have restless leg syndrome.
Right.
And they bought that, and they hired me. And they shouldn't have, but they did. And I went to work one day and called my daughter's mom, and she didn't answer for about 2 hours. And I finally got a hold of her, and she had nodded off. I mean, in this part-time job, I'd been there maybe a month, and I'd already called in sick 4 times.
Right.
And I said, I really need the rest of those oxys. Can you come meet me? And she was like, no, not now that because I screamed at her for nodding off because she was watching our daughter.
Right. Sure.
And so she wasn't okay with that. Anyway, I come home from work from that day, and the apartment is mostly empty. My daughter and my then wife are gone.
Wow.
My phone rings. It's a landline, and I answer, and she just basically says, "You'll never fucking see your daughter again, asshole."
Wow.
And yeah, and I mean, yeah, I'll be honest. I let me start that off correctly. I answered the phone and I said, "You better be thinking about how you're going to get your fucking ass home, or I'm going to beat your ass," is what I said.
Right.
He was like, you do not talk to me that way."
Right.
Which, clarify, I would not ever beat her ass.
Sure.
Um, but I threatened her,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not okay. And she definitely, she let me have it. And what I did is I called the cops on her. Trying to be resourceful, I called the cops on her and said she had, stolen our van and disappeared with our kid, and she's high on drugs.
Right.
And they were the police, the 911 operator was just like, we don't handle this kind of stuff in this way. You can't go after her like that. And I managed to talk them into doing a wellness check because I was actually concerned for my daughter, our daughter. And the wife, she ends up filing a restraining order against me. So 2 days later, I'm served with a restraining order, and now I know there's no way I'm going to see my kid again, or get to be in her life unless I get clean. But the day that she, I'll use the term kidnap, our daughter, or the day that she took our daughter and disappeared, was the day I got clean. So that was June 26th of 2007.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. So
how intense.
the rest of the book is my 1 year. It's my 1 year.
Right.
It's up until my 1 year clean. I don't want to give away too much of what's in the book. It's a tragic story for my daughter, really. Here we are 16 years later. Her mom still isn't clean. She's barely been in her life. And the only reason I got custody was because some harm was done to her on her mom's watch. So
right. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And how is she now, though? Your daughter?
That's a great question. Well, take a sip.
Sure.
So she is, I've talked to her about this recently, because I get asked this, what is her story? How is she doing? A lot of it, I couldn't tell you. It'd be better to ask her. But how is she doing? She's doing great. I'm going to be a grandpa, so she's,
wow.
She's pregnant. She's 20. She's in her last trimester right now. So that's pretty exciting. I ended up, excuse me, raising her by myself from when she turned 4 until About 13 or 14, I met my current wife,
Nice.
and
Wow.
I have two stepkids, through her previous marriage, and she was also married to an alcoholic
Right.
who was abusive, and so she got out of that, and so she's a Al-Anon member.
Mm-hmm.
So we have great conversations, like yeah, I mean, I got to say that program, we got, like I I started off earlier saying, I'm from an alcoholic home.
Yeah.
Um, you know, they have meetings called Chapter 9 meetings that are a blend of Al-Anon and AA.
Right.
And it's amazing to me, because you see couples and you get to identify through them, because it could be the male that's the drinker, or it could be the female. It doesn't matter. There's still that same, that relationship, that interaction with each other. One's a fixer, one's a
Sure. Enabler. What
enabler. Yeah.
what became of your career
With music,
in
or
general? Like how have you managed to keep body and soul together over the
oh,
past
thank you.
16 years?
Yeah. Um, So it was, and I'll backtrack just a little bit. In the middle of the mess, I became suicidal. Like, as while I was still, sorry, let me try that again. In the middle of being a active addict dad, I became suicidal. I had a job where I reached out to a hotline. They wanted me to go to inpatient. And I used the excuse, well, I can't be away from my daughter for 30 days. So I did an outpatient. I was introduced to 12 step at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I put together 64 days, and then relapsed.
Mm-hmm.
And that was before we lost the house and everything. But
Mm-hmm.
it had dropped the seed. And I
Right.
knew I knew when I went to that first meeting, when people were talking, like, I heard my story. I'd never heard, you know,
Right.
my way of looking at life and my reaction to stimuli
Mm-hmm.
retold back to me from
Yeah.
anyone ever.
Yeah.
Even my uncle, he had had so many years sober at that time. I think he knew, well, I'll wait till he's ready to really have some talks with him. So going from that to it dropped the seed, and then that day that my daughter was taken, um, I was like, I'm going to go to a meeting. That's the only place I can think of going.
Sure.
You know, I don't know. I didn't know whether I could get sober, get clean. I didn't know, but I
What was that?
knew.
What was that first meeting like? Or whatever, that meeting.
Yeah, that was. Um, it was. It was emotional. It was emotional.
Yeah. I mean, were there people there who helped you?
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
That's
Yeah, I got
amazing.
numbers, and some friends and people I'm still friends with, all these years. I don't live in Portland anymore. I'm over in Vancouver now, but
Right.
which is just
Did it
across
give
the
you
river.
hope?
Oh gosh, yes. Yeah. Yeah. It gave me hope. The hope was that uh that there was a solution somewhere,
Yeah,
and
sure.
I could see it with my own eyes. And I was watching, because I'm the type of person, like, I don't know if I could be described as an empath, but I really like feel people more than I hear them, I
Mhm,
suppose. I
mhm.
watch what they do, and it was the eye opener. I mean, I was broken. I was broken. I didn't know what else to do.
Yeah,
Everything I had tried did not work. I had tried moving 1,000 miles away. I had tried, um, you know, substituting one drug for another. I tried
sure.
combinations. I tried, self-help books and gurus, and it was being around people who were doing it and watching them. and their kind, gentle way of just being themselves and sharing what they knew to work, was it was I knew it could work if I worked it,
So how, I know you want people to buy your book, buy his book, God damn it. But
Yeah.
I'm just sort of curious how, I understand how getting sober works, but then like, how did you rebuild your life? Like, what were some of the steps you took as far as like gainful employment and stuff, just practical things?
Yeah, I'm going to introduce one other important factor is it was the coming to believe.
Mm-hmm.
It was faith in something outside of myself. For me, it's God. What I call God is, I don't know what that means to anybody else. It's very personal to me,
How in your at what point in your journey did you find God?
Well, it it was in that first month of, you know, the worst thing that could possibly happen, because I was very, very attached to my kid.
Sure.
As much as an addict can be, as much
Yeah.
as somebody using every day can be, I wanted to have a kid really bad.
Right.
And uh, so, yeah, that's it. It's hard to say because, at that point in my journey, like, I don't trust myself. I don't trust my thoughts. I
Right.
don't, I can't, anything that feels good, I'm afraid of at this point, you know?
Sure.
And, you know, I'm looking at, well, this higher power thing, you hear about the doorknob, and I mean, I had tried, like, Native American spirituality, and, Eastern philosophy spirituality, and I tried all these different things over the years, and but I was always trying them while I was loaded,
Yeah.
and I knew there was something outside of myself that was, at least I saw it as outside of myself, and I've also considered the possibility, like, it's inside all of us,
Sure.
perhaps. It's just a higher level of thinking that's beyond our, lizard brain, or
Sure.
our well-worn neural pathways. It's like there's
Sure.
something up there that if we allow it to, it'll guide us to healthiness, healthy decisions, healthy living. And that's what I looked at. That's what I paid attention to. Like I said, like I said early on, I didn't have a God problem. So using the word God wasn't a big deal to me.
Right.
I've had sponsees that really struggled with that. And
Yeah.
and it's like, I don't know. I don't know how to help them because I didn't have to overcome that.
Right.
Um, and maybe it's also because I just stayed open-minded. It wasn't a religious God by any means. It was, a spiritual higher power.
And this higher power, does it care about Paul Summers?
Oh yeah. And I didn't want to believe that either, because that felt good. Um, and I had my, curses, um, man, I'm still working on that relationship, you know.
Sure.
Um, but what happened was, I, as I told you, I was unemployable. I had this part-time job, uh, doing deliveries. Well, I was able to keep that job.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. Rent was due in 6 days. My ex-wife had emptied all the bank accounts. She
Wow.
emptied everything we had.
Right.
I had no money, but I had a check. Um, in some odd circumstance, we had bought, I don't know what it was, a DVD player or something like that, and there was some rebate. Well, that rebate form helped me pay my rent. I
Mm-hmm.
went to the manager and I said, my wife's gone, my kid's gone, she's buried everything. There's some substance abuse issues. Uh, can you give me a few days of a break? And she did, and
Right.
the next paycheck covered my rent. So okay, now I got 30 days, and I started looking at, well, that's kind of odd that refund or that rebate check just happened to show up right when I,
Huh.
so you start looking at those things, like the positive things that happen. And within about a month and a half, I was still working for this temp agency, and they got me a job as a truck driver at a plumbing supply company. And I passed the 3 month. Now I'm clean. They can
Test your pee all they want.
yeah, exactly. And wow, the relief in that,
Yeah,
just
sure.
knowing, gosh, I don't have anything to worry
Yeah, I
about.
don't have to worry.
Yeah, I mean, my head's still a mess. It's still a mess, but I get this job and I do everything I can to keep it. And I ended up there for 12 years.
Nice.
So I had set aside my music because within a year of that event where, my daughter's taken away and disappears with her mom, within a year of that, I have sole custody of her.
Right.
And I wouldn't have any of it if I had still dabbled or.
Sure. You got to just be 100%. This is my
Yeah,
mission.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I have friends who've gone through it. It's pretty fucking brutal. I see you've got guitars though hanging in your
yeah,
background here. So obviously there's music in your life now. Are you
yeah.
playing in a band, or how is it a part of your life at this point?
Well, thank you for asking that. Yeah, absolutely. So I was at that plumbing supply company 12 years. Um, I quit for about a year and a half to write the memoir.
Nice.
COVID happened, and I
Right.
was completely terrified. Like, what if I don't make a living? Gosh. So I went back. I went back to
Mhm.
working for them. And about a year ago now, talking about praying all the time. I pray every day. And all I pray for is, guidance.
Sure.
I don't pray for any items in particular. Uh, and that's really worked because then it's up to me to pay attention to where that guidance is coming. I got to ask myself over and over again if I'm, putting my own spin on it or.
Sure. So tricky.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I just read something the other day that said, pray for the ability to be accountable to that guidance. And I was like, I never thought of that twist. Like, okay, well,
Right.
kind of explains faith, I suppose. We're agreeing to be accountable to the faith that we have. Does that
Right.
make sense? Uh,
Yeah,
uh,
I guess it's a bit of a do-si-do, you know? It's
yeah,
like, what's good is the faith if you don't put it into action, I guess is what you're
yeah,
saying, kind of.
yeah,
Like, I believe, like, if I really believe in a benevolent God, then, it's on me to take some of the risk
yeah,
to challenge myself, whether that's through acts of charity or creativity or selflessness or whatever the message is that you're getting,
yeah.
to actually act on it. Oh boy, this is getting intense, man. I don't know what I'm gonna have to do when this interview's over.
That's a
something
great, yeah, okay.
something serious. Is that what you're saying, kind
That
of?
is exactly, yeah. I mean, and that's a great way. Thank you for wording it. It, I mean, that's concise. I, I can tell a story, a short story. Like I have a friend. I call him the Angry Buddhist. He's played music with me for years. A bass player. Um, he sometimes ridiculed Christianity, uh, but he had a really good friend who was like a devout Christian, and uh, and I just mean ridiculed in like the philosophical contradictions, I suppose, which probably every religion has somewhat. And he went to see his friend on his deathbed, and he said his friend was like crying, saying, you know, Kevin, man, like I'm so afraid.
Mm,
And Kevin's the type of poignant character. That's why I call him the angry Buddhist. But he he said, afraid of what? Like where is your God right now, man? And when I first heard that, I'm like, dude, that's rather abrasive. Like the
That's
guy, you know,
harsh.
what the hell, bro? You know, and then I got to thinking like how much love went into him saying that. You know, it's like embrace your faith.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. Of
you know,
course. Yeah.
if God wants you out right now, God wants you out. I would cherish knowing, or you know, you should. Any of us should cherish knowing like this is the plan. I'm just part of, you know, something
And
like that.
so, I guess to come back to it, how has is this a roundabout way to getting back to your music,
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
not?
I was gonna get there. I promise. No, yeah, and so I when my parents so my parents passed away, they left a little bit of something to have a
Right,
buffer zone for
right.
me, and you know I'm looking at life going, well, you know, I never grew up thinking I want to, you know, be a sales guy at a plumbing supply wholesaler. That's, you know, I want to be what I want to be, which has always been like to make music that makes people happy. And in the recovery side of things, there's all this research now about frequencies and how they help with healing. And they're discovering that some alcoholics respond well to 528 hertz when they're going through withdrawals or
Mm-hmm.
you know, trying to stay sober. And so I took a course and got a certificate. It's not a huge deal, but it was a lot of learning involved in sound therapy, you know, sound healing. And I started writing songs in this frequency range.
Mm-hmm.
It involves tuning the guitar a little bit different
Mm-hmm.
to 44 hertz in case anybody's like wanting to look into it. And all tuners have this range on it. So you and then everything's in the key of C. And so I wanted to make this a fresh start. You know, I mentioned some of my old bands and that you can find them, but I decided to take on a new persona. So I started calling myself Pablo Verranos, which is it's my name in Spanish basically. It's just
Right,
Paul in Spanish.
right.
And um and so I've been doing these instrumental, it's ambient acoustic instrumental with lo-fi beats. It's and so I've been doing it at yoga studios so far, but I want to get into perhaps festivals and you know things like that where it's just energizing and healing people. So it's been for me an amazing year of creativity, which I all but gave up on while I was completely focused on being a dad. You know, I always thought, well, that was my curse was creativity, not my gift, you know, and
Hmm.
finally found, especially through writing the memoir, it's like, you know, because it's creative at times,
Oh, for sure.
that uh that's the gift is being creative and hopefully helping others.
Well, Paul, I gotta say, this has been fascinating. I wasn't sure, I had no idea what I was getting into, but I
Same.
really enjoyed it. I found it very very inspiring and humbling, and I'm so happy that you know, you've made it through to the other side and persevered. It's a cool story. Thanks for listening. You can support this podcast at patreon.com/thedrunkalogs.